Sandra from Creating Spain, and today the subject is elevated pop-up cards. Now you'll see on the screen that I have various elements needed to create a card, and I have made this card a couple of times now, and I've discovered a much easier way of putting it together, but I wanted to discuss the way that the card is designed. Now, these two pieces here are the outside covers. This is the elevated stage, if you like, and these marks here are score lines, sorry, not score lines, cut lines. These are cut lines to allow various elements to be attached to the base, and obviously when you open the card then they pop up. These lines here in pink are score lines, and there's an awful lot of them, as you see, around the centre and a couple at either end. And the middle of this stage is actually this line here and this line here. When it's made, those two lines are folded together. And so the reason for these two little tabs here is so that you can have a double-sided embellishment actually in the centre of the card, and it'll be sort of like a triangular shape, as it were, in the centre of the card. So it's double-sided, and yes, it just looks nice done like that. Now the thing I wanted to explain, this by the way is simply an added extra. This is a belt, if you like, to go around the card. It's not necessary, but it's quite fun to have on. What I wanted to try and explain in this video isn't the design process, because this in itself is quite easy to design, but it's how to make your slits and things for your embellishments and the alternatives, and how to actually place your slits so that you get them in the right place and don't find that your embellishments come out of the card and stick out where they shouldn't, which would be a bit of a pain after you've stuck it all together. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to make sure that this is grouped. It probably is. I tend to make it grouped, but just to check. Yeah, it is grouped. And I'm going to move it so that that line is where it should be, just there. If I move this one to one side, okay. Right. I'm going to move this down so that it is level with that pink line there, more or less. I mean, I'm not doing it within the millimetre, but it's for demonstration purposes. And I'm going to move this one across so that you can see where it is. Okay, so this would be the midline of the stage. Okay, so anything that you place on here can go up as far as there, but it can't go past that. So for example, my umbrella, assuming I was going to put my umbrella just there, okay, it would actually be on the fold line, because that little tab there is cut out, so that would be the fold of the tab. And you can see that it fits in perfectly, not a problem at all, no issue with that. However, assuming that I made it enormous, just for demonstration purposes, if I were to put it there now, you could see that that line there is where the card finishes. That's not very clever. So you wouldn't want it to be bigger than that. Now, keep an eye on the width as well, because obviously if you're making things bigger, you don't want them to be clashing too much. So you also need to make sure that if, for example, you were going to put your umbrella there, now, for example, maybe you're going to put heart in it as well. If you were going to put heart on the same plane as that, you would want to make sure that it wasn't doing that, because one would cross over the other. But if you're going to put the heart in front, it would be okay. So when you do your card, you need to have a play around with the elements and work out where they're going to go. You need to consider whether something needs to be in full view or whether it's going to be sheltered behind something, whether it's going to be hidden or whether it isn't, whether you want it hidden, partly hidden, or whether you don't, or whether you want each individual element to actually be clearly seen when the card is opened up and put on a shelf or something. So those are the things that you really do need to consider. The other thing to consider is the construction of the card in such that it is going to be relatively bulky, and you do need to make sure that the card base is made of a reasonable weight card. 250 grams is probably the minimum you should get away with for that. But you can make your elements in a much lighter card. That isn't quite so much of a problem. The other thing to consider, obviously, if you're posting it, is how thick your card is going to end up being. It will cost you more to post probably than a traditional card. But from a design point of view, they're fun to do. They're not overly difficult to do. Once you've done a couple, you'll suddenly go, ah. And they are very, very much a case of fun to receive and quite a good surprise. So from that point of view, absolutely brilliant. Now, exterior decor. This is what I chose to do on a card I did recently. That was a buckle that I made for the belt that I was putting around the card to keep it closed. And then I did kind of like photo corners for the edges of the card to make it look a little bit like a photo album. And then I did have this with a stitch pattern on the inside, but in the end I didn't use it. I used something a little different. So that's basically it. The pieces themselves are very simple. It's the how to put it together bit which is a little more complicated, but I have devised an easier way than you might realise to do it. Regarding the placement of your cuts, this is a double-edged sword. You will get a much neater result, no doubt, if you design your card and you put your cuts in place and it's all done by machine. However, you may find, unless you're very good at picturing things in 3 dimensions, that that is virtually an impossibility to do and get them in the right place. So there are ways around that as well, and I'm going to show you a way to position those cuts after the main item has been cut. This one is one that you don't want to mess around with. If you're going to have the one in the middle, then just keep that one there and you can work around it with all the other ones that you have. Okay, now I've got to make a video, an actual physical video of me showing you the different elements and how to put them together. Okay, see you soon. Bye.